Hi, folks. Welcome back to the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. This is Tom Salemi. We have a great episode for you today. We'll hear from Matt Franklin. He's a medtech guy who joined a digital therapeutics company called Akili. Very cool company, very unique approach. We'll talk with one of our Newmarkers, Newsmakers CEOs. I don't want to spoil the surprise. Actually, I already talked with him last year, but we'll have a short snippet from him talking about their surgical robotic system. Oh, I said too much. I won't say anymore. And of course, we'll have Chris Newmarker back, giving the rest of the Newmarkers, Newsmakers. Before we begin, though, I want to remind you that our Device Talks Tuesdays will be back on November 29th, the week after Thanksgiving. Our friends at TE Connectivity will be talking about innovations in laser processing, from design to volume manufacturing of tomorrow's medical device solutions. Go to DeviceTalks.com. Register for that Device Talks Tuesdays. TE Connectivity always does a great job. It's very popular episodes that they put on, so don't miss it. Go to DeviceTalks.com. You can watch it live. You can watch it on demand. Finally, I'd say ankle deep in planning Device Talks Boston. That's happening May 10th and 11th. You cannot register yet, but when you do, when registration is available, do not wait. I guarantee that it's going to be a great show. One quick note about Thanksgiving. We're probably not going to have an episode of Device Talks Weekly next week, but we'll be putting out episodes of Intuitive Talks, and Stryker Talks, and Medtronic Talks over the next 2 weeks, and we'll be back with Device Talks Weekly in 2 weeks, 2 Fridays from now. So, folks, let's get this podcast started. All right, you ready for this?
Ready.
Chris Newmarker, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Tom. Doing well.
Chris, did you get the email that I sent you about changes here at the Device Talks Weekly Podcast? Going to expect you to work extra hard and long. We're going to have to re-engineer this Device Talks Weekly Podcast into Device Talks Weekly Podcast 2.0. So, choose now whether you're going to be part of this or not.
I've got to fill out the online form about whether I'm in it to win it here.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll give you the severance, 3 months of whatever we pay you to do the podcast, which nothing, but it's 3 months of nothing. So, you got that going for you, which is nice.
Wait, I thought I got like a lifetime supply of apple cider donuts. I mean, that's why you told me I should do this. I mean, like Chris, apple cider. That's why I'm so cheery on this podcast.
The lifetime supply will start 40 to 50 years from now. So if I'm still around to make that happen, I'll put it in my will. But I did, speaking of donuts, I in the name of science, tried a pumpkin muffin this morning, Chris.
Wow.
The kids, you always try to try the food that you're not really like, that's it. I'm done. Nope. Don't need to go down Pumpkin Road again.
Pumpkin pancakes? Pumpkin Road.
We don't need to go through all the pumpkin products that we like or don't like. But I did.
It sounds like it
looked so appealing, but it was just very sweet. Maybe, pumpkin bread I'm all in for. But anyway.
Wait, was it going to be a lifetime supply of pumpkin bread?
It might be, yeah. Pumpkin sausage.
Pumpkin muffins. There you go. Wow.
Here we are.
What are you feeling? We have Thanksgiving in a week. What are you feeling thankful for?
Oh, wow. Look at that. I should have prepared for a question like that. Well, I'm, thankful for many, many things, but thankful for everyone who attended our in-person events, everyone who listens to this podcast, of course. And we're going to have some great stuff in 2023. So I'm thankful for teammates like yourself who are making all this cool stuff happen. Man. How about you?
You too. Likewise. I'm thankful we can do this podcast every week, and it's really cool. We've built an audience. It's neat, like even when we were doing our Device Talks West show a few weeks ago, that we had people walk up to us and say they enjoyed listening to this podcast. So it's very cool.
That is cool. I got a nice message on LinkedIn the other day saying, "Oh, I listen to it whenever I go to work. So thanks for doing it." So anyway, I'm glad we can be part of everyone's morning drive or drive home or dog walk or wherever they're listening to this podcast. So let us, so speaking of Thanksgiving, that's a good point. So we will have a couple of podcasts out next week, including an Intuitive Talk. We'll have a Stryker Talk and Medtronic Talks. Stryker Talks and Medtronic Talks the week after. I'm not sure if we'll do a Device Talks Weekly next week, but we'll have a really great Intuitive Talks out next week. So folks will have...
Do you think we have time to get a Device Talks Weekly together in which we only talk about medical devices for turkeys? I mean, Minnesota, here's a fun fact. Minnesota is one of the largest, I think it is the largest turkey producing state in the country. If you have a turkey, it could likely be.
We were talking exclusively about the fowl, right? Not the human variety turkey.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of those here too. But I mean, in many places, though. I mean, yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you were bringing so many turkeys to the world. So thank you for that, Minnesota.
If you're driving and someone's honking behind you,
he's probably from Massachusetts.
Probably the human variety. Yeah, it's probably from Massachusetts.
Anyway,
get out of the way.
Let us roll into number 5 on these here new markers, newsmakers.
Yes, let's talk about medical devices here. So number 5 on the list. We're talking on Thursday, and this news just came out today. Was a CMR Surgical announcing they've installed now more than 100 of their Versius surgical robotic systems worldwide. They now have robots in operation across Europe, Asia, Australia, Latin America, and the Middle East. So it's a question I posed on LinkedIn, or should the surgical robotics space in the United States get ready for a British invasion from this British surgical robotics company? But yeah, they're definitely growing and a company to watch in the space.
Absolutely. I mean, I think theirs is a laparoscopic sort of approach to robotics.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And it's and kind of the idea is that it's they feature like kind of a freedom of port placement, and kind of the idea that the surgeons can operate the way they did laparoscopically but still benefit from robotic surgery, and that the Versius is kind of like smaller, more lightweight, more modular. So yeah, they've obviously been getting some traction around the world, and they're even building a roughly 75,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Cambridgeshire. To hopefully I pronounce that right, Cambridgeshire.
I think Cambridgeshire, right?
Cambridgeshire, yeah. So they're building a new manufacturing plant to meet the growing demand.
Now I'd like to play part of an interview I did with Per Vergaard-Nurseth. He is the CEO of CMR Surgical. If you want to listen to the whole interview, you can check the show notes. I'll have a link to it there. You can also go to DeviceTalks.com, look under the Device Talks Weekly Podcast. We ran it in summer of 2021. So take a look at that. Per Vergaard-Nurseth had a unique background for medical device CEOs or medical device surgical robotic CEOs. He actually comes from the robotic side of things. He was previously managing director and senior vice president of the ABB Robotics business unit, and it's identified as a world-leading manufacturer of industrial robotic systems. So I would check the interview out. He has a unique perspective on surgical robotics. So let's take a listen. So this is the time where I think it's a great idea to bring our listeners up to date on what CMR does. What is the significance of your approach? Tell us about your robotic system.
I think it's we have a system which is different to what has been in the market in the past. We are having a modular system and architecture where you have each arm being able to be moved independently, which in our opinion gives the opportunity to have more flexibility when it comes to doing surgeries. And we have given ourselves the mission to really bring minimal access surgery or keyhole surgery to as many people around the world as possible. And that technology and that design concept that we have really enables them to use across multi-speciality and in multi-type of surgeries.
So what is the significance of being able to provide that keyhole approach, the minimally invasive approach?
No, I think the significance is obviously that there are today still so many people around the world who don't get access to keyhole surgery. There are still far too many people who are only getting access to open surgery. And obviously, there are clear benefits of performing keyhole surgery for the patient, for the hospitals, for the economy, I would say, even for the company, not for the country, sorry, because you have less time spent in hospital, you have less wound infections, so many benefits. But the thing is that actually performing manual keyhole or manual lap, as we call, obviously is a very difficult task to do. And this is really where surgical robots really come in and making it much easier for the surgeon. So that's really enabling us to help giving keyhole surgery to more patients all over the world.
So the opportunity. So the opportunity isn't to convert people who are currently doing keyhole surgery to use your system for keyhole surgery, but rather get people who are performing things through open surgery to do it through keyhole surgery.
That's clearly the mission we are set out to do, yes.
Excellent. So what is the origin of CMR's technology? And tell us a little bit about the company. How long has it been around?
CMR Surgical was founded back in 2014 by 5 founders who had the mission to really bring keyhole surgery to millions of people around the world. And in just 6 years, they were able to basically go from a wooden prototype to actually give more than 1,000 patients access to keyhole surgery. And I think this has been such a strength of the company, have been staying so focused on one mission, and to be able to really go from sort of an early prototype and all the way to helping so many patients in such a short period of time has been an absolutely fantastic journey for the company.
No, that's very true. I mean, that is a short distance traveled in terms of years, but many miles traveled in terms of accomplishment. That was an awkward phrasing, but how was that made possible? Because you're right. Most usually you're seeing companies take 5, at least 10 years before they have their technology used on a patient.
Yeah, I think there was, and first of all, it started with a fantastic concept. The whole concept around having a different design philosophy with sort of individual arms, as we just spoke about earlier, with a clear mission and focus there. And that was really the ability. Number 2, that we have had a great access to fantastic people coming out of the university here in Cambridge in the UK. And so the availability of very competent people. And thirdly, we have been having a very strong support with long-term investors who has been supporting CMR Surgical all the way back since 2014. And basically all of them are still remaining as important and long-term supporters of the company.
So we know what we need to know about CMR Surgical. Chris, what is number 4 on the New Markets Newsmakers?
Well, number 4, if you want to know about Affera, the company that Medtronic spent $1 billion on, our managing editor, Jim Hammerand, had an entire interview he did with their founder and CEO. And, just really interesting that they're actually, putting some, uses, from nitinol into this device. It's funny. I mean, I've been covering this space for more than a decade, and it's hard not to be at a medical device conference where somebody's not talking about nitinol over all these years. But I mean, here we go. This is like it's got their Sphere 9 catheter as a compressible lattice nitinol tip. With a nitinol with 9 mini electrodes. So nitinol was kind of their solution to get a larger tip for this ablation catheter in there, which they think could be really a advantage for ablation procedures. So some really neat little insights on what's gone into this technology there.
And remember when $1 billion used to be a lot of money for medical device acquisition? You mentioned it was $1 billion. I forgot it was $1 billion. Like when Ardian was acquired for $1 billion by Medtronic also, that was like big news. But anyway, we're off topic, but
you're right. No, it is true. I mean, it used to be, Yeah, even like, I mean, I guess that's inflation, right? I mean, like it used to be when somebody like now, like somebody was like, oh, they bought them for $20 million. You're like, wow, that's a lot of money. And now it's like, oh, that wasn't that much. Like, like.
But Jim Hammer did a great job talking with the CEO and founder Doron Harlev, who I believe is also a listener of the podcast. So if he's listening, hey, thanks for listening. It's a unique device in that it not only ablates, but it also maps. It also gets data on where there are a need for future ablations. So data is king, as we know. So certainly explains why Medtronic did pony up. And Jim did talk to Doron Harlev and Rebecca Seidel of Medtronic about the acquisition. So it's a great article, and just reading the quotes from Doron just gives you the sense of kind of a, just an old time medical device entrepreneur, like trying to figure out cool ways to do great things with medical devices. So I suspect we're going to be hearing more from him in the future.
And he, the article wraps up with him saying that, he just thinks Medtronic is really unique in its ability to bring big innovations and to turn them mainstream. So it really sounds like he thinks that this acquisition is what's going to allow, these innovations they've really been working on to become mainstream, and and hopefully this can take ablation to the next level, give even more effective treatments out there for AFib.
What is number 3 on that vaunted New Markers Newsmakers list?
Hey, well, number 3 on the list, we've got BlackRock Neurotech unveiling their next generation brain-computer interface, the Neuralace, and they call it the Neuralace because it looks like a piece of lace. It's thinner than an eyelash, and it's possible to engineer it with like a variety of materials and patterns, and you can like put this on white swaths of the brain's surface. So I mean, just a really BlackRock was one of the early companies to get something out there for research, in the BCI space with their Utah array, and it's neat to see this next generation BCI. They're currently expecting the Neuralace to become available as a tool for the research community by 2024. That's
great. There's a lot of movement in the materials space for neuro, that's for sure. And I see that Sean Hooley not only included a picture of Neuralace, which is a very, very cool little piece of fragment on someone's fingertip, but Neuralace has a video on YouTube as well. So if folks are interested in checking out what Neuralace, so with an A, NEURALACE looks like, they can find it on YouTube.
Or embedded in the Mass Device article.
Or embedded, go right there instead.
There you go. Just go right to the article.
Mention YouTube. There's no such thing as YouTube. No.
Dude, what's that?
Mass Device is the real powerhouse we're talking. So go to Sean Hooley's article. We'll link to the New Markers Newsmakers in the show notes. So, all right, Chris Newmarker.
Fantastic.
What is number 2 on your amazing New Markers Newsmakers list?
Yeah, there's just a lot this week. Number 2 on the list, we have Cardinal Health, announcing that they're, going to try out this pilot supply chain network to enable more hospital level healthcare in people's homes. And, they're putting this together through a strategic partnership with Boston-based Medically Home. And, Cardinal Health is part of a whole group of companies and health providers. Baxter is also part of this. They invested $110 million in Medically Home earlier this year. But now, Cardinal Health's at-home solutions supporting a Medically Home health system customer with their new pilot VeloCare supply chain network. But it's a really interesting idea, something that people think that is going to become more common, that there's like a host of things that you just have to go to the hospital now. You have to be checked in the hospital for from like severe pneumonia to congestive heart failure exacerbations, that in the future people can they could just get this equipment to your house, and you could stay at home.
So I have to learn about Medically Home. It says on the website, Medically Home is passionate about providing safe and effective medical care to all patients everywhere, particularly historically underserved patients who are typically economically, socially, and geographically disadvantaged. Yes, I'm reading from the website.
Yeah.
bringing our care model to patients, help overcome challenges from a host of well-known obstacles. So it's certainly something that we'll continue to track, no doubt. Maybe we'll have them at DeviceTalks Boston since they're in the Boston area, but this seems to be a great way to, again, get people out of expensive clinical settings, but also improve healthcare equity. Make it treat the people where they are whenever possible. So
if you keep people out of the hospital, there could be less, hospital acquired infections, which are just increasingly becoming a problem, and plus a lot of people just, I think would prefer to be in their house.
I think so.
If they could provide me hospital level care in my house, if I have, some kind of condition that needs treatment versus getting checked in, I think I would take it.
All right. Well, that sounds great, Chris Newmarker. What is number one, the big number one on this Newmarker's Newsmakers list?
Well, number one on the list was, Stryker unveiling this model operating room, their OR of the future, at their Flower Mound, Texas facility, and we have a picture of it and a whole article that Sean wrote up that is describing what's going on with it. But this has actually gotten a lot of attention on Mass Device, and I think it's because it's actually really interesting. Like, where does Stryker see operating rooms going, and the fact that they have so many products that go into operating rooms, and they're kind of saying this thing is demonstrating it's showcasing their best in class products and what a partnership looks like with Stryker as an integrated OR provider. But I mean, it's all kinds of these different innovations, including stuff as nitty gritty as eliminating Velcro, in order to reduce hospital infections. Just all kinds of data insights, from devices, and innovations to make the OR patient ready sooner, which would increase the amount of patients you could run through somewhere, to provide procedures, which I've heard that health providers are really playing catch up right now, after the pandemic. So I mean, it seems like Stryker's hey, we got all these solutions that could make your OR a lot better, and here is this OR of the future that we can find out about all of them.
Absolutely. Well, we're happy to have Stryker at our DeviceTalks Boston meeting back May, where they went over a lot of this, their digital strategy. I'll be talking with Robert Cohen, who's the president of digital robotics and enabling technology at Stryker, about where this is headed, and also talking with Andy Pierce, who is a group president of MedSurg and neurotechnology. We'll be talking about their use of technology and how they're bringing basically the cool Vocera technology into the hospital bed. So a lot of cool technology things going on at Stryker, and I would very much like to go. I read that and I said I want to go to Flower Mound, Texas, which I never knew existed until I saw that article. But would be very cool to see what their vision of the future looks like. So glad that's getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, and it's actually really good that you mentioned, the acquisition of Vocera Communications, earlier this year. I mean, with all their digital care coordination and communication. I mean, so they're just doing, they're traditionally Stryker is viewed as being an orthopedic device company. They're the largest orthopedic device company in the world, but I mean, they're really, making a push to try to answer some big questions, around healthcare right now. So that's just actually very fascinating.
Absolutely. All right. Well, great list, Chris Newmarker.
Yes. Go down to Flower Mound, Texas, and maybe try you think they'd have a good breakfast burrito joint around there? Or
I think we need a DeviceTalks Flower Mound. What do you think? Yeah,
I love it.
Let's do it. Well, Matt Franklin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
We don't talk to a lot of so-called digital therapeutic companies, but Akili's been one that I've been tracking for a long time, and excited to have you on. And what made it most compelling is that you're a med tech guy. At least you had been at one point or 2 points in your career. So we have to find out how you made this transition, or even if you see this as a transition outside of med tech. So the first question I like to start with is just that. How did you find your way into the medical device industry?
Yeah, so it's funny. I like to joke sometimes that I'm a recovering consultant. So I actually started my career and the information technology side of the world. So first as a strategy consultant, later as a developer and development team leader. After graduate school, I pivoted into the medical device in really kind of the cardiology space is where I started and kind of grew up with Boston Scientific. And there, I had the privilege of, working with incredible teams to define and bring, regulated technologies to market literally globally. We did more than a dozen launches over the course of my career. So really got a feel for what it takes to create and shape these regulated product markets.
Yeah, you've been through, to set the time frame, you went into the tech industry in the mid to late 90s when a lot of people did that. So it's nice, though, that you found your way over to the light side in medtech, and you had joined Guiding, correct? That was your first medtech job, according to your profile?
Yeah. Started with Guidance.
And then Boston Scientific, of course, through the acquisition.
Yeah, with a little stop in between, a little company called the EV3.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yep. Majority of my formative years are with Boston Scientific, primarily spent on the product and then the commercial side. So working with the R&D teams to translate requirements into products and then bring those to market.
That's fantastic. Yeah, those are three great places to begin a medtech career. So let's talk about your more recent work. You're with Thrive, who we've had on the podcast, well, probably 2 years ago now. Very, very interesting liquid biopsy screening company. And then you most recently, after that, you had joined Exact Sciences. I'm getting to the point where how did you find your way to join Akili? Because it's unlike any of the other companies that I think you've been a part of before, or maybe you're going to tell me, no, it's exactly like the other companies that you've been a part of before. So take us through your most recent career stops.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think a lot, like many of these, it's sort of one of those fortune kind of intervened. As you mentioned, since 2015, I had really been on the precision medicine side, so sort of first with Foundation Medicine, really helping to grow and that whole field of precision oncology, comprehensive genomic profiling, that led to Archer, and then, Thrive, which was a number of the Foundation Medicine leadership team. So it was an opportunity to kind of reconnect, reunite.
That's right.
And then, we were acquired by Exact Sciences. So spent 18 months there, an incredible company, helping to build their new oncology business there. And sort of, again, out of happenstance, was connected with Eddie Martucci, who is the CEO and co-founder of Akili through a mutual friend in the area here, Dave Melville. And I sat down with Eddie and, it was just sort of one of those, get to know each other, coffee chats. And, as he described the history of the technology that was founded at University of California, San Francisco, the rigorous data, the studies have been conducted, multiple randomized controlled trials, and the impact that this could have for children with ADHD, it really connected with me. I've shared this in some other venues, but we have one of our children was diagnosed on the autism spectrum. So we have lived the journey that many of the families that we serve at Akili deal with every single day. We have had to fight for resources. We have had to deal with the vicissitudes of getting the medical therapy right. And while, our child's older now and thankfully is doing well, we would have loved to have had an option like Akili, a non-drug option, something besides cognitive therapy, which is helpful, but you have no way of knowing whether it's having an impact or not. So something like Akili that is engaging, it's delivered in a video game format that kids actually want to do versus having to force them to go to therapy or to go take their medication. They have this, interest and excitement, and it has the ability to directly impact those pathways in the brain to build those, in our case, attention, capabilities, cognitive capabilities, and maintain them over time, right? So it's not like a drug where you take it, you flood the brain, and as soon as you go off medication, you lose all positive benefits. We've done studies at Akili that show the effects persist, right? The effort the child and the family puts in persists over time. So it's a really unique solution that fills this unmet clinical need that families like ours, realized and were suffering through.
Talk a bit about Akili's offerings, EndeavorRx. First, let's talk about the game, and then we can kind of talk about the clinical pathway that it took to get to market.
Yeah, so EndeavorRx is the first and only FDA authorized video game treatment. It's today for children who have been diagnosed with ADHD, ages 8 to 12, but it's been studied in a number of other conditions, autism spectrum, multiple sclerosis, major depressive disorder, et cetera. But the game utilizes proprietary technology, again, that was developed at University of California, San Francisco, has been published in multiple studies, including Nature, but uses a unique multimodal engagement. And so it challenges the child. It's essentially a racing game, if you think about it. So you pilot, so you use the video game to steer through a number of obstacles. And then as you are using that part of your attention function, it will issue challenges. So it will, for example, flash creatures that the child has to capture, but also ask you to discern between different types of creatures. So it may, on this mission, ask you to, as you're piloting through these obstacles, capture the blue creatures or this particular type of creature. And the child would then have to not only have that persistent attention function, but then have that challenge, right? That intermittent challenge function as well. So it is actually physically creating new connections in the brain, right? As you're challenged. And it continually monitors moment by moment the child's performance. So it always keeps them challenged, but not too much. So if the challenge gets too extreme, it will back off. If the child is progressing and, showing fluency, it will increase the challenge. So it's always keeping you sort of at that optimal level of challenge to continually develop that attention function.
Do we know what is physically happening in the brain, or is it just a matter of that we know that when a child plays this game that they behave differently after a period of time? Or do we know what's going on chemically in the brain?
Yeah, it's actually physically activating those specific regions of the brain that are implicated in attention function. So It's not this broad spectrum. It's not like a drug model where it just, hits all of the receptors and has this general, it is specific and targeted to those regions that are most implicated in attention function. So it's really an elegant solution.
So what has been the clinical pathway or the clinical trial pathway to getting EndeavorX on the market?
Yeah. So one of the things that really attracted me to this company was the commitment to rigorous science. So as I mentioned, we're the first and only FDA authorized. So the first video game to go through the de novo 510K pathway comes back to sort of your traditional, that's a very well-worn pathway in the medical device side, but this was a novel new construct, right? A video game. So software, but a video game. So we submitted as a part of that regulatory pathway. We had multiple studies, 5 studies, including randomized controlled studies, right? So very rigorous, where there was a sham control. So actually randomized patients were randomized to 2 different arms. One played EndeavorRx, the other played a similar education game, kind of a word challenge game. And then, those 2 cohorts were compared. And what we demonstrated was that the EndeavorX arm showed significant improvements in attention function as measured by a standard test called the TOVA test. So again, very rigorous randomized controlled study. And we're now in the process of pursuing indication expansions to adolescent populations, adult populations, and populations outside of ADHD.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So talk about the physically, about the game for a moment. Is this a program that you put on a computer that the person has or the child has or that the user has, or do they buy an entire console?
It is a mobile game format. You can download EndeavorX today
from any phone?
From App Store or Google Play Store.
Okay.
Yeah, it's compatible with most of the devices you'll see. So whether iPhone or iPad or Android device, and can be downloaded. It does require a prescription.
And that's what I was going to ask that next. How does that work? So it's prescribed and you get some sort of passcode. Tell me, how does that work? I asked the question.
Yeah.
I'm guessing here, but
it's interesting. That was something else that we had to develop. When you're a pioneer, you're first blazing these trails. One of the things we had to build was an infrastructure to basically fill the prescriptions. So yes, contact. You would work with your healthcare professional, so a pediatrician or other specialists like a psychiatrist. You would talk, as a parent, you would talk to, the physician. If they agree, they would go into the electronic medical records system, pull up, you can write a prescription. That then goes to a pharmacy partner, a specialty pharmacy partner that we work with. They text the parent a link. Parents would pull up that link on their iPhone. fill in some information, confirm the prescription, collect information about insurance, things like that, your standard prescription type of format. Once we have all that information, the parent or the caregiver would receive essentially an activation code. So they would then go download the game from, the App Store, pull it up, put it in the activation code, and that unlocks a 30-day treatment. So it's a 30-day treatment.
Oh, okay.
It's performed 5 days a week, 25 minutes a day. We also have really cool, based on feedback from caregivers, we have a companion application. So it's called EndeavorRx Insight. But at the same time, the child downloads EndeavorRx, they're going through their gameplay. The caregivers, the parents, can download EndeavorRx Insight, which enables them to follow along with their child's treatment.
Oh.
So they can see how much time they put in, how many missions they've completed. It even shows the level of effort. So are they just sitting in the room kind of going through the motions, or are they actually making progress, putting in effort, doing that training of those new capabilities? That's one of the really compelling capabilities that this software, this video game format, we have a wealth of data that we can use to not only improve the game, to improve the engagement, but then to share with the caregivers to help them really be part of the treatment. And we've seen those families that engage with that Insight app that are an active part of that treatment, as you can imagine, have a much higher compliance rate, get through their 30 days of treatment, and hopefully realize the full benefits of this powerful new treatment.
That's interesting. So I didn't realize that so it's actually treated as a prescription. Take this for 30 days, essentially. You're playing this game for 30 days.
Yeah, exactly.
So are the improvements after those day 45 or day 60, do the improvements remain with the child, or are they going to need to use this EndeavorRx, not indefinitely, but for a longer period of time than 30 days?
Yeah, so we have conducted studies. So one of those regulatory studies that we submitted with our application was the STARS adjunct trial. And in that trial, it was kind of an innovative design, actually looked at children on medical therapy, so on stimulants or without, plus EndeavorRx. So looking at sort of multiple treatment scenarios. But what it showed is that after 30 days, we saw a significant improvement in symptoms. Then there was a 30-day break built in. So there was a 30-day period where they were not actively engaging in treatment. And what we saw in both the medical arm, the medical stimulant arm, and the de novo, or the, just the device only arm, they both maintained their performance over time. Then they went on, after that 30-day break, a subsequent 30-day treatment, and showed more improvement. So the way we view this is really a periodic treatment. You don't have to take it every single day. It's built to be able to work with each child in their situation. You can take breaks, but then the benefits persist. If you feel, hey, our attention capabilities are starting to diminish, or we're feeling, those symptoms, we're seeing those symptoms, then you can go back on and initiate that treatment again. And the other beautiful thing about this is the safety profile is incredible. No major adverse events. The most common, I believe it was a 9% adverse rate. The most common events we saw were frustration, maybe headaches, right? Things that you would expect from a, rigorous training type of regimen, but extremely, I think, beneficial safety and efficacy profile with this device.
And how have you worked with payers for this? It's always great to be first, but sometimes it's not when you're dealing with payers and regulators for that matter. But is this something that they've been open to reimbursing?
Yeah, there was a bit of an education process.
Yeah.
I experienced this with Foundation Medicine and with Thrive.
Sure.
Whenever you're creating a new category or treatment, there is an education process. So we do have a team that's on board today that's, wakes up every single day dedicated to engaging with the payers, both, in our case, it's the commercial private plans that we're working with because we're, pediatric indication, as well as state Medicaid. That's another key group of stakeholders for us. So, we've gone through the process of educating, here's this new treatment modality, here's our clinical data, here are the logistics. We are starting to see some positive progress there. We just announced in our earnings call that Highmark, which is a Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance plan in the Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Delaware area, announced that they would cover EndeavorRx, prescription digital therapeutic, as a part of their medical benefits. So we're starting to see now some of the big influential regional plans coming on board, and we hope to see more progress. We really hope this is sort of a template that the payers can use with this Highmark decision to kind of copy and step up and help us make this important new option available for patients.
Fascinating. Yeah, I want to get into building the market in a minute, but as you're talking, I'm curious, what sort of intellectual property protection do you have against other game developers who may just say, hey, let's do that and create a game that does that? I imagine there's protections against that sort of thing.
Yeah, we do have a robust portfolio of intellectual, property that, is seeking will continue to expand over time. So yeah, this is a little bit different than, other kind of, entertainment mobile games where you don't have that. We actually do have the ability to have some patent protection here and some intellectual property. So we'll continue to expand that over time.
Well, and let's then focus on building out the market. So is it currently prescribed by, and you did mention it, but was it pediatricians and psychologists or just psychologists? Who is able to prescribe this right now?
Yeah, the two groups that we're really focused on initially are what we're calling these integrated behavioral health centers. So these are multidisciplinary practices that treat, complex cognitive issues. So we're focusing there. Typically, there will be a psychiatrist or medical director. In parallel with that, we now have a team on board engaging directly with pediatricians and other specialties. There's actually a long tail of specialties. Pediatricians, pediatric specialists are sort of the first place, but there's a long tail. Anyone who has a medical license, an NPI number can prescribe this. So we do see there's a variety out there.
And what is, we talked about the payers, what has the response been to the providers? I imagine they're, on one hand, they're hungry for something new. On the other hand, they're probably skeptical of something new. What is the response been?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a strong, as I indicated in, our family's experience, there is a clear unmet clinical need here. And we've also seen, you may have seen sort of the headlines too about the articles covering that, perhaps over prescription of stimulants, the shortages of Adderall are hitting sort of the mainstream medical. So I think there's a rising awareness that, hey, if there were alternatives to drug therapy only, right, that's important class, but, if there were alternatives, that's great. So I think there's that clear unmet need. So there's incredible receptivity, there's curiosity. At the same time, to be honest, right, this is a novel new approach. It's a video game. Aren't video games part of the problem?
Right, right.
And the good news is we have that strong scientific and clinical data to fall back on. So, what we're doing now is we're engaging with clinicians, and doing that education, that outreach, informing them of this new option. We're sharing our clinical data. We're helping them through the logistics so they can easily prescribe it for the appropriate patients in their practice. And now we're going back in the process of following up, making sure that, after 30 days that, they're incorporating this into their overall treatment plan. So really trying to build it into routine clinical care is sort of the mission that we're on right now.
And I want to talk about your pipeline in a minute, but you did mention about, I think you're expanding the market for EndeavorX. I think you said you were reaching out to or beginning to move toward adults or other patient classes. What does the future look like for EndeavorX?
Yeah, so our focus today is on pediatric, so 8 to 12-year-olds.
Yep.
And then our goal is to expand within ADHD. So we have a trial that is underway in adolescents, so children from 13 to 17. And then also we have a study looking at adult populations, so the 18 plus. So those are underway. Beyond that, we've conducted studies in autism spectrum, multiple sclerosis, major depressive disorder, and actually some more acute conditions. We have 2 studies ongoing today with collaborators in COVID fog. Yeah,
okay.
So the sort of the long haul COVID patients. One of the key complaints is cognitive dysfunction, in particular attention, inability to maintain attention. So we have 2 studies that we expect to see data early next year in that population. So there's some really interesting applications outside of our core ADHD indication.
Where does multiple sclerosis fit into this? It seems like an unrelated condition, but it clearly isn't.
Yeah, similarly, cognitive impairment is part and parcel of the disease.
Okay.
Many of these multiple sclerosis patients do suffer from, inability to focus, right? Which has a deleterious effect on, sort of everyday quality of life. If you're struggling to direct that attention, it just makes everything more difficult.
No, that's a great point. For some reason, I was focused more on the physical. And finally, is the plan to continue to expand your current product EndeavorX into other markets, or do you have some other products that you're developing that will give you a pipeline going forward?
Yeah, so we do have a number of other technologies in-house, but beyond sort of the US, one of the key markets that we're looking at is international expansion. So we have a collaboration with a partner in Japan called Shinogi, And they are now conducting sort of their phase 3 equivalent study, so their regulatory approval study in 8 to 12-year-old children in Japan. So we're excited to see that trial continue and progress. We also have a CE mark. We don't have current plans to launch right now, but we have the capability of launching in Europe as well. So looking at expanding geographically first is sort of next up beyond ADHD.
And final question. I mean, I opened this up by noting that you came from the medical device industry. You bring that experience. You've also been in precision medicine. So you've sort of been joining these industries that are sort of emerging and growing and grabbing territory. I'm curious what your assessment is of the digital therapeutics space. And it's taken some hits as of late. It seems to be a sector that's cooling off. Akili doesn't need to be part of that cooling off. But I'm just curious, do you see this sector as a whole as being here to stay, or do you see a few successful outliers like Akili existing in a sector that maybe has peaked?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a large space. It's interesting. I think, for me coming into it, I'm, still in this learning process, but really, if you think about it, there's really 2 different categories. You have sort of the digital therapeutics broadly, which include this broad spectrum of things that you would associate with wellness. Even things like meditation apps could, theoretically be categorized under digital therapeutics. But then you also have the prescription digital therapeutics. There is a much smaller cohort. You probably have 6, 7, 8 products that have actually gone through the process of obtaining, some sort of regulatory approval. So our focus is more on that prescription digital therapeutics. And I think in that particular part of this broader market, the prescription side, we are seeing some progress. There are a number of other companies in this space who continue to make progress with payers, with adoption. So, I do believe that this space is here to stay, right? As we mentioned, there is a clear unmet clinical need. There is a clear crisis emerging in cognitive health and the need to improve cognitive functioning, right? I think that is beyond a doubt at this point. So, for us, it's just kind of putting one foot in front of another, working with clinicians now that we have, we're in this launch phase, working with clinicians to make a difference every day, right? And we'll continue to evolve the way we engage with customers. We'll continue to improve the outcomes that we get, with this, really incredible, flexible format, video game format. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's early innings. We're making great progress and, we'll just do it one patient at a time.
Fantastic. All right. Well, it's a great story. And Matt Franklin, thanks for joining us on the podcast to share it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, that is a wrap. Chris Newmarker, what do we want people to do right now?
Gobble.
We don't want people to do that. What do we ask people to do regarding that?
I was just trying to prepare for our turkey-themed podcast week. No, people, you got to follow, subscribe.
Absolutely. Follow, and subscribe. Or as you say in Turkey-ish, gobble, or gobble.
Right. There's something. Hey, cock-a-doodle-doo. No, wait, that's not turkey. No turkey.
All right.
I was in a discussion recently with somebody over what a loon would sound like.
Oh, you haven't heard a loon?
It has this very weird sound. I had to look it up. It was like.
Oh yeah, I've been up in the lakes of Maine. The loons are plentiful and they're quite angry. Stay away from the loons. Do not go near loons.
They're very pretty to see in the middle of the lake. But yeah,
they are. My dog would like to, when anyone that came close to the dock, the dog would start swimming out to the loons. And we're like, you do not want a piece of that loon, Daisy. Stay away. Loons, they fight well in the water. They're loons. I mean, you don't want to deal with that. All right. So people should follow, and or subscribe to the Device Talks podcast network. You'll get Device Talks Weekly. You'll get Stryker Talks. You'll get Intuitive Talks. And we hope maybe some additional talks in the near future. Stay tuned. Folks can find us on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Tom, Salemi. I'm still posting my Wordle scores on Twitter, but that's really about it. But you can find me there at MedTechTom. Chris Newmarker, how's about you? Where are you out there in social media land?
Find me on LinkedIn, Chris Newmarker, like a new marker. And, you can find me on Twitter at Newmarker.
Yeah, we're there still. But, please do share this podcast episode on your social media channels. And of course, connect with Chris and myself when you do that, so we can be part of those conversations. So just to recap, so next week is Thanksgiving. We likely won't have a Device Talks weekly podcast next Friday, but we'll have an Intuitive Talks out earlier in the weeks, and we'll have a Stryker Talks out early the following week, and a Medtronic Talk out that following week as well. You can subscribe to Medtronic Talks on their channel, and then we'll be back next 2 weeks from this Friday, the week after Thanksgiving, with another Device Talks weekly podcast. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks, Chris Newberger. Happy Thanksgiving, my man.
Happy Thanksgiving, you too. Take care, everybody. Have a great Thanksgiving.